Thank you. Great to be here. Nice to meet you all. Looking forward to having chats over the next few days. So my name's Stephen Manos. I'm the Associate Director of a program called the BioCloud, of a national project in Australia called the Australian Biocommons. We are a project that's been around for about 5 years, and we have been tasked with building a national bioinformatics platform. And we've just been refunded for another 5 years, which is excellent news. And I'm here with my colleague Ziad. He's going to stand up and wave so I can point him out to you all. He's our bioinformatician on this project that I'm going to be talking about, and he's the product owner of our National Tower Service. So a little bit about the Biocommons to start with. We have these 3 missions. The Biocommons is funded to the tune of around $5 million a year at the moment. So our number 1 mission is to support Australian researchers, life sciences research communities with community-scale digital infrastructure. Number 2 is we provide access to computational services to support sophisticated analysis and analytics, but also support digital asset stewardship and everything that comes with that. And number 3, I think we're going to hear that a few times over the next few days. And number 3 is to provide training and support for all the complex things that we do in bioinformatics, which I'm sure you're all very, very familiar with. And an important thing to note here, and there's a lot about the Biocommons and how we work in our national kind of bioinformatics agenda, but one of the things we do, and we do well, is we kind of engage with the national life sciences community through this growing set of lenses, whether it's genome annotation, metabolomics, proteomics, even command line users. Shaping our engagement with communities in this way is really important because they give us context, they give us ideas, they give us priorities, platform requirements, and so on and so on. What we don't say is how can we help all 30,000 life science researchers in Australia in the same way. So it's important that we have this context because we can actually build fit-for-purpose platforms, which you'll hear about in the next 10 minutes. And these communities really give us tremendous power and warrant in how we work and how we go about things. The other thing to note about this community idea is that we're not just driven by the techies, but we're really driven by the biologists as well. Evan already touched on this, about the idea of the scientists doing the science. And we're just not in the corner of the technologists or the e-research people, but nor other single-loud voices. And particularly for our work in Tower and Nextflow, there's a lot of voices that we try to listen to from the biology corner. There's conservationists and biologists and people working in government departments that need access to these sophisticated analytics methods. And they also need access to the best digital platforms and infrastructure so they can continue being amazing in the field, but also be augmented by these amazing digital capabilities elsewhere. So our ambition is not to turn all of them into command line junkies, but rather to give them access to that infrastructure and support, also build the support mechanisms and expertise and training to be able to achieve that. And then finally, once we figure out what these communities are and what they do, well, we then think about, well, what services do they need and how do we support them? So we go ahead and design and build and operate these services. And here's a kind of list from our website, www.biocommons.org.au, which I just took a snapshot of today. And at the moment, it includes many things, such as a national AlphaFold service for protein structure prediction, and an online collaborative genome annotation platform, which is based on the Apollo technology. And next year, Nextflow Tower will appear on this list as well. So there's a question, what's the motivation of me being here? Why am I here talking about Tower? And how do we get into Nextflow and Tower? Well, this is the genesis of the idea that started in the last few years, is that as per our usual community engagement and community design process, we engaged the Australian bioinformatics community and simply asked the question, what workflows do you use and how can we help you? And the response that came back was quite resounding, which simply said that Nextflow was the most popular language for developing and utilising and reusing workflows. And subsequent consultations with that community, over Zoom and in-person engagements with them, really revealed a need for a shared platform which would allow them to launch and manage and reuse and collaborate around pipelines using on-premise infrastructures, but also our supercomputing infrastructures in Australia, as well as our commercial cloud infrastructures. And it's worth kind of summarising maybe a few challenges which make our job just a little bit harder than being a single entity. So for those who don't know, Australia is really big and we are spread across the country. We have a bunch of digital infrastructures all over the place. We have our supercomputing, our two supercomputing facilities being Pawsey in the west and the NCI supercomputing facility in Canberra towards the east. We've got a national OpenStack-based cloud, the ARDC cloud, or what used to be called the Nectar cloud, which is based around the kind of eastern seaboard. We've also got commercial cloud providers like Azure and AWS and Google, that GCP, that have a footprint in Australia. And of course, a myriad of on-prem infrastructures that exist in our partners. And the biggest challenge, of course, is that they're not all the same. They're diverse. They have their own policies. They all look different. They have slight quirks. And they all have different access methods. So it kind of makes our job of trying to build a more coherent, homogenized, more easily accessible ecosystem just a little bit harder. The second set of challenges we come up with are just things you typically see in command line environments and infrastructures. You know, firstly, just running and monitoring complicated pipelines with command line isn't really preferred for the biologist or the people working in conservation. Secondly, in the middle there, collaborating around the same pipeline in a command line environment is hard and can be really hard. And it's even more challenging when you're trying to collaborate with people outside of your immediate team or immediate group. And thirdly, it's just really hard to monitor, debug complex stuff in a command line environment, and also very hard to just generate rolled up reports. So all of these facts and challenges really led us to this project. So we took on Tower to respond to these things, and which were the national survey results as well as these complex challenges. We engaged with Seqera a few years ago now, and the project really started in late 21 and early 22. And we've reached a number of milestones which are listed here over that time. And today we're at the point where we have around 15 groups nationally that are engaged with about 50 users. We've integrated Tower with various facilities like the NCI and Pawsey supercomputers, various on-prem HPC infrastructures, as well as AWS and Azure. We've supported many groups with onboarding onto that platform, as well as supporting their development of Nextflow and optimizing their Nextflow workflows. And we've also just promoted, with Seqera's help as well, the service nationally through various forums. And our next major milestone is to launch this platform as a national production-grade platform, April to May next year. So I'll just say that, you know, for us, the Nextflow Tower platform isn't a single service. We actually, as we've begun to really understand the platform, what our various user stories and use cases are, we've come to realize that there are actually 3 distinct services or platforms that we are going to provide using this one single technology. These have different use cases. They have different communities that are going to be kind of connected to these services. And they're also going to have different support models. And these 3 suites of services really are, number one, the kind of idea of the personal workflow, the individual that's working alone in this context. 2, the context or the idea of the collaborative workspace. And 3, the idea of providing more kind of pointy and attuned national bioinformatics analysis services. The one that we've really focused on to date is the middle one, the organisational workspaces, and the support model around that is really one of being a high-touch service. We set up a project with a facility or a group, and we hold their hands to bring them onto the platform, engage their on-prem infrastructure people to bring them onto the platform, and so on and so on. Alongside of this, we've made personal workspaces available. Again, different support model. We've largely been hands-off. It's your responsibility to deal with this. We'll make sure the actual platform and the website is up, but beyond that, for now, you're on your own. And then in future, we intend to, as we identify specific use cases, provide some pre-configured pipelines, compute resources and data resources for this 3rd service model. So we've also learned a lot about what not to do as a national service provider as we've engaged, and we realize that there's a lot of skills and resources out there that we can engage with and kind of collaborate with around providing like a more cohesive or holistic service. And we've got these 4 prerequisites that we're quite upfront about with our users as they come to the platform, and really just ask the question, you know, Do you have your own pipelines, and are they actually written in Nextflow? Do you bring your own HPC allocation, or do you have access to commercial cloud? Are your data sets accessible and movable to the platform? And also, do you have, for number 4, your own in-house bioinformatics expertise that we can collaborate with? And setting these out has actually been great because it allows them to focus on their strengths and what they need to do, and for us to focus on ours and to work together to do the thing we're doing. And of course, because we're the Biocommons, if they don't come with any of these things, we can help out with training, bioinformatics expertise, or getting access to compute infrastructure. This is a snapshot of some of the groups that we use that are currently on the platform. They're a mix of national research consortia that are quite distributed across the country. There's research institutes, and there's also university support units in there too. And you can see a mix of compute platform use here. Some of those are on-prem HPC infrastructures. Sometimes they mix it in with commercial cloud, and some of them just use Tower to access our supercomputing infrastructures in Oz. And all these groups are very geographically spread as well. And I'll just spend a few minutes as I wrap up just talking about maybe 2 key examples. So example number 1 was the AGRF. AGRF, the Australian Genomics Research Facility, they do genomic sequencing for academic customers in Australia. One of their main bases is in Melbourne, just around the corner from where our offices are for the Biocommons. And they were the first group that we onboarded onto the Tower platform. They have a small bioinformatics team who run a handful of production pipelines for data that's coming off their sequences. And they wanted to make, the use of these pipelines simply much, much easier so they could allow other people within the organisation to also engage in this data post-processing or pre-processing kind of stages. And in between, and essentially what they really wanted to do was also be able to swap between their on-prem HPC and AWS as and when they needed to increase demand on the service. And they can absolutely do that now. And a second key example here is WeHi, a very, very large medical research institute, MRIs we call them in Australia, the Walter Eliza Hall Institute for Medical Research. We've been working with their central e-research group and support team who have and operate an on-prem HPC infrastructure and want to utilise Tower on top of that. So we provide the Tower service, specifically a bunch of workspaces to them, and in turn they engage with a number of research teams or research groups within the organisation who utilise those workflows within those workspaces on their on-prem infrastructure. This is my last slide, so I'll wrap up shortly, but I just wanted to finish up by just maybe highlighting some, broad challenges and also the opportunities that we're seeing. We are trying to build, design and operate a national Nextflow-based ecosystem with Tower, and it's not easy at all. You can appreciate how challenging it is to build this, these relationships and this operating environment. It's a multi-party environment, it's a multi-infrastructure fabric, you've got all these different use cases, and we see a whole stack of issues from the kind of, whole of ecosystem stuff all the way to individual technical integrations that we need to manage. But it's happening. And with that, there's also all these awesome opportunities that come with utilising this platform and taking this national approach. One of the big things for me is being able to engage with users directly, but also being able to engage in a business-to-business sense, where you can actually engage, as I said, with the WeHi and AGRF examples, a support team who in turn are working with their own groups on the ground and engaging with them as, of course, they know them best. And then the last 3 points there in the opportunities are really about saying that there's a power in being able to manage these complicated workflows from a single place, different code, different data resources, different infrastructures for a single group. That's been very powerful for a lot of these users like AGRF. Being able to make complex Nextflow-based pipelines and infrastructures, code infrastructures, more broadly accessible to biologists and non-experts has been amazing, and we will continue to do that. And of course, just being able to create a nexus which brings together the best code and global efforts in code and compute and infrastructure and data has been awesome. So I'll wrap it up there. It's not just me, it's Ziad, it's a whole bunch of people that have been involved in this project in Oz. Thank you so much for your time, and looking forward to speaking with you all.
We'll try and get one question. We'll try and fit two into one. So, have you been working with NF Core pipelines? It sounds like you've been using them. Are people aware of the Nextflow NF Core pipelines, and are they kind of integrated there? Second one, what have you been doing and what's been successful on the education front in terms of educating folks around how to use this?
So to answer your first question, it's a mix. Some are NF Core and some are just simply from private repositories or the public repositories that are not on NF Core. So we get a diversity of Nextflow pipelines that are used. The second one about education, again, mix of stuff. We've had yourselves come over and present training, which has been amazing nationally. We also continue to run Nextflow training from our Pawsey Supercomputing Centre, and we do that probably every 6 months now.
Okay, awesome. Thanks a lot, folks. Take next video.